Today we get to talk about one of my favorite tools, and this tool is called Scratch. Scratch in a nutshell is an online coding program tool that allows anybody really, but in this case kids, to snap commands together to make actions occur. So I'm going to dive into the details here, but let me just mention a couple more things about the tool itself. You can see them at scratch.mit.edu. This is a completely free tool created by MIT, and you can use this tool without logging in, or you can create an account. Now, creating an account, of course, will allow you to save things, projects that you make, and so on. But you don't have to. You can play around without ever having actually logged in, just by clicking the Create button when you get here. But I also want to mention, you'll notice under my account it says Teacher Account. There is a third kind of thing you could do, which is create a teacher account. And this allows you to create classes. Classes help you to organize students and allows you to kind of create usernames for them so they can create within your classroom. So if you are interested in that idea, it's completely free to do. You just click on this teacher account FAQ and you would sign up for this account and put in some information about yourself, and then it will be created for you. The other area I want to mention before I jump into the tool itself is this educator resources. If you go to this button, you will be taken to an area where you can see that there's all sorts of resources if you wanted to use this in your class or with your students. There are some tutorials here. There's some great coding cards, step-by-step instructions for students to get started creating projects. And this is actually where I started, just trying to learn the tool itself. An idea page and some other things as well. So this is a great place to get started. So you might be wondering, okay, I hear you, but what is this thing we're looking at? So what I'm going to have us do is actually hit the Create button, show you the interface, and actually walk us through just a couple of short exercises so you can see the advantages to a tool like this. Okay, so while it's creating that project here, I want to mention one other thing. This tool is great if you have students in the classroom with access to computers, so they either have their own device, maybe you have Chromebooks in your room, or maybe you have laptops, or for younger kids, I should mention that there's a Scratch Junior that works great on iPads and Chromebooks as well. The idea is the same, but it's intended for younger kids. So this is great if you have devices in the classroom for the kids to use, but it's also great if you happen to be in a situation where you have remote learning going on or you're not with the kids. They can definitely work on this at home because any browser will allow you to access Scratch. Okay, so from within this interface, you can see that it's broken down into really three main areas. The first over here on the right, this is what's called our background or our stage. This is where the actions are actually going to happen. So when we run a program, we'll see it happen over here. This area is where the sprites, a sprite is a Scratch word for characters, will appear. So however many characters you have in your program, they'll all be listed down here. Over here are backdrops, so backgrounds basically to the stage, and we'll add all of these in just a second. Over here is where you are going to actually build your code. So we're going to drag pieces over and we're going to connect them together, and they're going to actually create code that can run. Over here is several pieces that will have different kinds of code under each one. So let's take a look at these real quick. Okay, so the ones I'm going to focus on are really the first 5. Those are the ones that I have found, at least beginning, you'll use the most. The first one is motion, and all of the blocks that are underneath this are exactly what it sounds like, things that make you move or have to do with the direction of things. So you can see move 10 steps, turning, go to a certain specific XY axis or a random position, and so on. So you can see these all have to do basically with where you are in the stage or moving to an area. The next one down is called looks, and you can see some of the things inside of this one. If they're going to say something or think something, that's in this area. If they're going to switch costumes, and switching costumes is really about making animation look like they're moving or walking or something like that. Changing the size, showing and hiding things, making things go forward or so on. These are all to do with how it looks. The next one down is called sound, and that one's pretty self-explanatory too. If you want them to play a sound or to change the pitch of something or volume, that's what you're going to find here. Events. Under the events area is where you're going to find kind of the blocks that would kick off a string of code. So if you notice, all of the other blocks we looked at had a little notch taken out of that would be connected into. These have a rounded area, which means that they start the code. So there are lots of ways to start code inside of Scratch, including when the green flag is clicked, which is over here, or when you press a key. There's a lot of different options, but an event needs to kick off the code. And lastly is the control. And this is if you want something, when you want to have control over something. You want it to wait a certain amount of time. You want it to repeat a certain number of times. And for those of you that might have any experience with coding, if then else statements, you would see those in here as well. Okay, so this feels, I know, a little bit abstract. So let's actually go through an example so you can see doing something, making a sprite do something so you can see how this really all works together. Okay, so I mentioned that you can have different characters that you can add into your program. Right now we have the cat, and the cat is always the default for Scratch. But if we want to add in a different character, we're going to come over here to this green, well, blue, and when you roll over it, green button that says choose a sprite. If we click on the little search icon, you can see here are all of our sprites that we can choose from, and there are different categories up here. So you can choose any of these that you like. We will maybe choose this dog. All right, so there's our dog and there's our cat. To delete any sprite out, we'll go ahead and delete out the cat here. You just hit the little trash can. All right, so here's our dog, and we're going to give him a stage to be on because this white is kind of boring. So we're going to come down here to where it says choose a backdrop, and we're going to choose the search option again, and you can see all the different backgrounds we have. Now, there are some that look a little more lifelike or a little more realistic, and some that are meant to look a little cartoony. So you could choose any backdrop that you want. So let me go ahead and choose one. All right, I'm going to go ahead and choose Night City. All right, so you can see our dog here is attempting to walk across this street. So we've got our backdrop, we've got our sprite. Now we want to actually make something happen. So in order to kick off any code, as I mentioned, you have to come down to events. So in this case, we're going to say when a certain button is pressed. So let's say we want to choose the right arrow because he's going to walk to the right. Is pressed, then we want something to happen. So we are going to now go to the motion. So let's say we want him to move when we hit the right arrow. So I'm going to go ahead and choose move 10 steps. Now I'm going to show you, I'm going to run this and show you what he's going to do over here. If I choose the right arrow on my keyboard, you see where he moved? Not very far. Watch again. Okay, so we know that that's not very much. Let's say we want to actually increase this to 50. Let's try it again. Okay, he did move more, but still not a lot. So let's actually say 250. Let's pull him back a little bit, and let's see now. Okay, that's pretty good. He walked quite a ways over here. Now let's say after he moves, we want to actually add in a sound. We want him to say something, or we want, actually let's first do a sound. We want a sound to happen, and then we're going to have him say something. So we'll come over here to sounds, and we will say play sound dog 1 until done. Now, how do we know what this dog 1 sounds like? Well, when you find something like this, and these specific sounds are connected to that specific sprite. So obviously, if we had chosen a cat or kept the sprite cat, that wouldn't have said dog. But if we want to see these sounds, we would click on the sound tab, and we can hear the dog 1. Okay, so that's what that sounds like. And there are some editing tools down here. You can fade it in or out or make it faster or slower. But if you're not crazy about that sound or want to add in another sound, there's a whole host of sounds that you can actually add in. If I roll over, that's showing you what those are. I'm going to keep my dog sound, but know that there's a lot of different options here. Okay, so if I go back to my code, now let's run it and see what happens. First, it's going to do this, and then it's going to do this. Okay, so he moved, and then he barked. Now let's say that happened too fast. If I come down here to my control, let's say I want it to wait maybe 1 second before it barks. I kind of want you to see the separation here. Let's see if this will work. Okay, it did. These you can actually put in 0.5 here if you wanted, if that was too long, but I think that was okay. Last thing, let's add in under the looks, let's say we want him to think something. So let's say he's going to think, you can type right inside of here, I think I might be lost. Okay, now let's run the whole thing and see how it looks. Right arrow. Okay, and there he is thinking. We could have continued to add these. We could have had additional characters in here, of course. And the kids, once you show them the basics to this, they will be off and running. They really do love to create with this. I did academic enrichment after school for a group of 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, and they loved that. Especially, I'll mention this, under sounds, you can actually record your own sounds right here, and they loved that. Once I showed them that, then I'd kind of lost control because they really wanted to create. Now, of course, there's a lot more to Scratch. One other thing I'll show you, if you changed costumes, because you might be noticing it looks like he's kind of sliding across and not really walking. Watch this. If I flip through here, you can see it looks more like he's walking or thinking. By changing costumes, you can make kind of the character look more animated. So I just want to remind you that switching costumes is right here. And if I switched costumes as he walked, it would look a little more like he was kind of walking with his legs instead of sliding across. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is you can swap out any of these as you need to. So let's say I want to make this when we click the green flag so you guys can see that more easily. To get rid of any block, you just slide it over there to the left. It'll get rid of it. We need a new event. So I'm going to grab the when flag is clicked. Now we want these things to happen. So pull our little dog back over here. We'll click the green flag. Okay, there he goes. So you can change out any pieces of this and then continue to build. Let me show you this too. You can go into full screen mode. So we'll pull let me pull the dog back first. There we go. Now full screen mode. Now if I hit the green flag. All right, there he goes. So I just wanted to show you that you can swap out any of these and go full screen mode if you choose to. A lot to learn and a lot to take in here for Scratch, but here's what I want you to know. This is actually, it may look complicated. This idea of snapping together code blocks is a really great way for kids to start with coding. And once you show them that basics, they can create things. So in the classroom, how could you use this? You could absolutely have kids create a part of a story that you read as a class, recreate it using sprites and backgrounds. They could tell their own story about things that they like or don't like. There's actually quite a bit in terms of math that you could use inside of here as well. Very easy to create games, review games. I've read about older kids creating Scratch games for younger kids to practice math facts or even reading or sight words, things like that. For more ideas, you guys could go out there and look on that educator page, or I'll show you one other place you can look for ideas of what you could use this for. But I would really encourage you to dive in here and take a look at this. This is one of my favorite tools because kids love it so much. They pick up on it so quickly, and really the sky's the limit on what you can do with this. And it's a great starter place for kids to begin this idea of block coding. And again, as a reminder, for younger kids, there is Scratch Junior, which is also a really great place to start. Let me go back. Oh, here's where you would name your project. And it would say, if you did log on, it would save it under your name. So let me go back here for a second and tell you that if you do a search here, let's say I was doing a search for, say, math games. What you'll find are other Scratch pieces that other people have completed. You can take a look at these, you can play them. There's actually a way you can also copy it in. I'll go into here. You can see inside of it, which means show me the code. If you want to remix it, it means make a copy of it and put it inside of my own project so I can look at all the code and I can modify it on my own. Look at all that. My gosh. But this is a really great place to look for things that, let me go back again, things that other people have created and get some ideas. So I would really encourage you to play around with Scratch and to see how you might be able to use it in your own classroom. Good luck.